team. Look, did anyone watch their game against the Redskins? He was doing like two-step drops. I mean, they can't. And oh, by the way, they got Jake Long off his couch. Jake Long's dead now. Next week, David's starting for the Vikings at right tackle.
Give me that check, I'll play.
I'm going to put you in a wheelchair and staple you down.
It is always.
Around a little bit.
Have you enjoyed just calling your alma mater for a couple years on the radio?
Well, I had every intention of never walking into a broadcast booth again when I retired from CBS. After 30 years, I was happy as a guy could be. And then Michigan, Frank Beckman retired, and Michigan came calling, and I kind of reluctantly agreed. The only reason I really agreed to do it was because Jim Brandstetter and I go all the way back. We were teammates. I've known Jim since I was 19 years old. So reluctantly, I kind of did it, and I got to tell you, I've never had more fun in my life. It's been so much fun to get back into college football and get back into really enjoying what it's like to be on a college campus on a Saturday afternoon. It's been more than I could have asked for.
Be honest, has he ever picked up the tab, though, for the dinner the night before or after, or it's always you?
No, Jim is a generous guy, so don't try to drag me into bashing him. The only thing I will admit is that before I would take the job, I had to get a structural engineer to take a good look at the size of the steel beams under the broadcast booth in Michigan Stadium, because I wanted an assurance that we weren't going to land on those poor folks down there in Section 23.
Real quick, though, before we get to this year's team, I'm curious. I want to bring up a bad moment in your broadcasting career, and that would be the Michigan State game last year. You're calling your alma mater, so for the first time in your broadcasting career, there's a ton of emotion. I would guess when you were on Monday Night Football, it was your job, and you'd call the game, and when the game was over, you would pack up your stuff and walk out of the press box. The call of the
that would be true.
The call of
would be true.
The call of that last play has become legendary, in that I think Jim kind of goes silent, and I believe your line was something along the lines of, "I'm not sure I'm ready to talk about what just happened."
I was, yes. Your analysis is correct. I was always impartial. The only people would always say, "Oh, you don't like my team," and all that.
Right.
I didn't care. The only thing I wanted it to be was 35-34 at the start of the fourth quarter. So we kept our audience. Ratings were the only thing that I cared about. But you're right. I care deeply about Michigan football and what happens, and we're emotionally involved. And when that happened, I was stunned. I don't recall I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of football games, but something that dramatic when 10 things had to happen perfectly for Michigan State to end up in the end zone there, and all 10 of them happened, and you don't see that very often. You're right. I was speechless.
Well, your alma mater seems to be in pretty good stead, although coming off the loss against Iowa, the rankings came out yesterday. They're still in the top 4. Is this still a really good team, or do you think they're a great team?
Well, I think until Michigan beats Ohio State and Indiana, I don't know what kind of a team this is, how good this team is, because it's too early to make an assessment. They are a well-coached – these kids have taken to what Jim Harbaugh has told them they have to do to be successful. They've worked so hard. Do they have warts? Sure they do. So does every team in college football, except maybe Alabama. But everyone else is capable of going out there and maybe not playing the best game they possibly can. And so the reality for this football team is very, very simple. It hasn't changed. Nothing happens unless you go to Columbus and beat Ohio State. Now, what happened in Iowa to us is we no longer have a margin for error. We could lose one game before that Ohio State game and still survive. Well, guess what? We've lost that game, so we have no margin of error. Indiana's coming in on a Saturday afternoon. If we stumble against Indiana, well, then it's over.
We're talking to Dan Dierdorf here on 97.1 The Ticket. Dan, the one of the warts you mentioned is the rush defense. Michigan State was able to run on Michigan. Iowa was able to run on Michigan.
Maryland was, too.
There is so much talent there defensively, and Don Brown has done a good job. The scoring stats, everything is in their favor. What do you see? Why do you think they have struggled against the run, especially in the last few weeks?
Yeah, we haven't tackled very well. And I think that's been the single biggest issue. I think that the scheme has put people in the right place, and we've missed tackles. And I'm not a brain surgeon. I think anyone who's watched or listened to the coaches talk during the week realizes that that's something that Michigan acknowledges that we would really like to see improve. I will say this about that defense. People have gotten some yards, but boy, when you get to the 20-yard line, things get a whole lot tougher. The reality is our defense doesn't deserve much in the way of criticism when it comes to Iowa. They gave up 12 points. I know the scoreboard said 14, but 2 of those were on the offense, a safety. They gave up 12 points on the road. That should always, if you'd have told me before that game started that Iowa was going to score 12 points on Michigan's defense, I would have said, well, are we going to win by 20 or what do you think the final score would be? Under no circumstances would I have thought that would have generated a loss. So I think we've given up some rushing yards, but I'll tell you, when they get in the red zone, they really tighten it up. And I can't lay any blame for this football team on our defense.
What about the offensive line? Your obvious expertise. The line has been better this year than it had been, but still running game kind of shaky the last couple of weeks. How do you feel about the offensive line?
Well, it's Wilton Speight got hit way too many times in Iowa. Sometimes it looked like it was a mental error, but you can't turn people loose. You can't. Take like the last play of the game. The guy who hit Speight was a defensive end who was untouched. Untouched. You just can't give a guy a free run at your quarterback, and that happened. I'm sure the line is working hard to tighten that up, but you just can't do that. And yes, I'm sure I can't even measure how disappointed they are. When you're in that huddle, let me tell you, and everybody says just one thing: all we need is a first down. All we need is a first down. So you know exactly what you have to do, and when you can't do it, it's terribly frustrating. And I'm sure they are, and I hope they take it out on Indiana.
Are you confident that if indeed Speight does not play this week or even the next week, that let's worry about this week first, that John O'Korn can lead them to victory Saturday?
Oh yeah, I don't have any doubt about that. O'Korn has a skill set that is good enough to win. I think all of us, I was one of them, that assumed that he was going to be the starting quarterback on opening day this year. I assumed this last year when we know Jake Rudock was leaving and O'Korn was sitting there. He was being groomed. He was the guy you kept hearing how great he looked working against the Michigan defense. And then Wilton Speight won the job. So what that means is we have a guy who has NCAA experience. What he doesn't have is any experience at Michigan. And, there's a giant question mark there. But I don't think this is some scenario where you throw your hands in the air and go, oh, my God, we have no chance. John O'Korn is better than that.
Dan Dierdorf here with us on 97.1 The Ticket. Dan, tell us about Friday. You are going to be honored at Michigan Stadium, and I guess I'm unclear. Are you honoring Michigan football? Is Michigan football honoring you? What exactly is happening here?
The Pro Football Hall of Fame is doing a program where they are honoring the different members of the Hall of Fame and their universities. This is a program they've been doing for about 8 or 9 years now. at the Hall of Famers high school, and they developed this beautiful bronze plaque that's a piece of art, and you would go to your high school and you'd give it to the high school. Well, they're now extending this to the college level. The University of Michigan and I are going to be the first example of this new program. This is our maiden voyage, and for the Hall of Fame, and I'm flattered that they've chosen the University of Michigan and me to participate in this. So, in reality, it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think Ford Motor Company is the sponsor of this, but we're giving this plaque to the university. That's what it's really all about. So I don't think anyone. It's a plaque of me. So in some way you could interpret that I'm being honored, but really it's a gift from the Pro Football Hall of Fame to the University of Michigan in honor of me. So that's what it is.
Pretty cool. Hey, Dan, we really appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, I hope I'll talk to you guys again as we talk about going to the Big Ten championship game.
There it is.
That would be
All right.
sweet.
Happy
Wouldn't that be
Thanksgiving.
nice?
Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, same. Yeah, all right, guys. Thanks. Bye.